Can you hear me? So I want to start with the disclaimer. In the program, it says that I'm basically presenting Open Euro LLM. I'm part of Open Euro LLM. I'm also part of ELLIS and ELLIS. So it's already trying to sneak in here. And I'm not part of Swiss AI, but I'm often connected to you guys. And I think it's great that you are doing this builders meeting. Oh, and I hope this is not going like this all the time. I think one point about building is that if you look at the word, if we want to have impact, and as academics, we also like to think about impact, then the impact that is shaping the future is comes from what is built rather than what is written on paper, right? So of course we think about things, but especially now we have the impression that AI is like a really big, fast train that is running very fast. And with the paper, we can nudge it a little bit, maybe in like a small thought in one direction, but it feels like it has become much more difficult to actually shape the direction. One thing, of course, is academia is always related to education. So we can educate people. It's important that we have open source models to practice things, but it would be nice to also shape the future, right? And I think this is, I don't have clear answers, but I want to share my thoughts on this and maybe also my worries a little bit. Yeah, so maybe you remember this picture from the celebration of the Pope in 2005 and 2013 of the inauguration. And in 2005, you see no cell phones. In 2013, everyone is having a cell phone. So some of the public habits have changed simply by the release of technology. And so if we look at the history since maybe 1990 to now, there have been, like, the internet has been rising, smartphones have been rising. And now LLMs obviously are the thing that is associated with AI. When people say, I need an AI, it's basically an LLM. And it was not really academia, but I mean, it were people from academia in a company that have built something that generated that impact. It might also be worth pointing out 2013 was about when AlexNet had a splash. Also, the movie Her came out in 2013. Maybe now we are talking about agents and reasoning, and I guess the next shocks are maybe still ahead. So for society, there's also, of course, always the talk about AGI. But I want to quickly look back how the world looked like before the internet actually took off. So I'm old enough that I have been around. And for instance, I've been around at this event when the wall came down. And that spirit was certainly a very optimistic spirit about the future, right? So people were dreaming of a friendlier world that we use our openness. So basically walls are coming down. It has to do with less, being less closed in society, being open, collaborating. And it was a very optimistic spirit. The spirit of 2025, I mean, I don't want to make too bad mood here, but is more around notes like this, right? So we basically feel like that what has been the stability or the stable backbone of a free world is kind of has become unstable. Investments in AI, often also kind of investments into geopolitics and basically trying to secure the competition here. And also, I mean, we are not there yet, but I'm anticipating that we are soon stopping to juggle around with apps and tabs, right? And then we have a one-stop shop towards the internet. So basically, it's not about choosing, like us as humans, individual apps anymore, but the adoption is done by an LLM that basically knows us very well, such that you don't have to choose between WhatsApp and email and what kind of communication channel you want to choose. But actually, you just want to communicate, and that's much more easy if your personal assistant is doing that for you. And of course, the personal assistant knows a lot about you, and it might be quite irresistible. And then it becomes the next gateway, and who owns that gateway might have a lot of power. So I also basically just want to mention some of the stuff. So we have been playing around as academics also with agents. So I like this idea to think about also the scientific community being agents that work together. Basically, it's an ensemble learning machine and trying to figure out or to produce knowledge, right? And that's also something that is important as a society. We try to generate knowledge, and it's not the individual scientist that needs to be superhuman. It's the ensemble and the mechanisms that, like the reviewing process and how we keep things going as a community that works. And so basically other agents keep track of the, say, epistemic flaws we might have when we build something. And so as an ensemble, science has worked fantastically well. And this work, I mean, basically AI agents can by now also cite already quite well. There we tried to build a benchmark that was tough. By now it's kind of solved. So it's basically the message is we don't need to have superhuman performance to be useful already. Another thing that I have been very interested in is how to decompose the learning task such that it can be done continuously by many labs. And so that leads to compositional continual learning. There's one work that basically investigated this. One of the things that came out from that work was that among the many methods, model merging is the one that actually doesn't have catastrophic forgetting. And of course, larger models work better and are more easily to adapt. Now, that is still focusing on trying individual LLMs to become better and better, right? But at the same time, you know, a few months ago, Google has released the Agent Development Kit. And it might be that we are experiencing soon an economy of agents that gets away with LLMs that are not outperforming us that much, because also the economy actually works quite well just by sharing the labor among people who are in companies who are good at one thing but not at everything. And so it's a hypothesis, of course, but yeah, we basically have also started thinking about this in the lab, to what extent the cognitive work from LLMs should already be treated as a new factor of production. And the main thing is basically that, yeah, it doesn't have to be superhuman. Oops, again. It's just trying to wake you up before lunch, right? So, oh. I think it's probably, it's sentient already. Okay. That's driving you crazy in a bit. Okay. So yeah, basically it's sufficient if LLMs are cheaper and always on, and can basically can autonomously negotiate how to share the labor. And also, maybe I try to work this quickly. Let's try. Maybe. Oh, it's still not working. Okay. Yeah.
You can stay as a presenter. Mirror. Now it's presenting. Fine. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Nice. Now it's showing something here that it's not showing there.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Okay. Just this very slow.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. All right, that's very slow. Or maybe it's always one slide behind. Is that possible? Okay, it just doesn't want me to show this. Ah, okay, newspaper. Okay. All right, so this just for illustration, of course. So basically, up to now, we got used to sharing quite some personal information on the web. In the future, it might become very cheap to get a very different amount of information from you, from your interactions. And so basically what the type of fear of being safe that we developed over the last decades might be very different from how this will work out in the future. So there, many machine learners are concerned about safety and security. I still find that there's basically maybe less focus on data privacy and the how to ensure basically the sovereignty of the individual than on thinking about the risks that will happen when an LLM becomes sentient and may come up with basically superhuman capabilities. So basically, I think this is a much more realistic threat that we are facing right now. And if we just continue with the way how we have shared information in the past, if we have agents around that can crawl the web at a scale that we are not familiar with, and at a price that is much cheaper. So if in the past, basically you need a person to stalk you, now you can have several agents to stalk you on the net and build profiles of you. I think it's worth thinking about how to build protocols and transactions that basically are more safe. And so that's also triggering research questions like, can we have a small or a smaller LLM on-prem? and then still using frontier LLMs that are much bigger for certain individual tasks that actually require superhuman performances, maybe. So in the same way as we not always need Einstein when we run the economy, many things can be done with rather redundant tasks. But from time to time, for innovations and so on, we might reach out to use high performances. So I think there's a great need to think about how to decompose cognitive tasks into things that are less cutting edge and those that are maybe at the very frontier. Yeah, so I haven't done much research in that direction yet. One thing that, but I have this general tendency to think about how to empower basically the user rather than the companies. Also, if you think of how we try to get adoption, it's more like that basically companies invest more than a factor of 100 more into advertisements than we invest into decision-making support in what we actually want. And so this work is maybe goes in the direction or has a similar motivation that also evaluations are very subjective. So some of us may want to evaluate for other criteria than others. As scientists, we also know this, that we often like to change the way how we evaluate models of other people. And it can be very costly to redo this all the time. So we also have to think about efficiency and effectiveness. And so this is one work where we basically pooled over all the benchmarks that existed, decomposed them into atoms, and developed a mechanism how to flexibly retrieve one of the 2 to the n possible benchmarks that you could construct from all the data points that are out there. Yeah. So my little speech so far basically tries to bring across this worry about the change that is coming from LLMs as they are right now, basically just from the fact that they may start sharing the labor, that they might start outpacing us quite soon. And I think this is also a challenge for us, but also an opportunity to think about how to use these upcoming changes maybe to develop technology that tries to make basically, ensures protocols that are not corruptible and try to protect data ownership, but it has to be technological solutions, right? So we cannot, it is not enough to make rules. We have to find a way to enforce things technologically. So now basically it's one thing, so building stuff is much easier in companies are much better in building things than academia is. And I think that's also one worry I have with the many initiatives that we have, that we always are very enthusiastic and coming together as some group and try to build something. And then we have, I mean, one thing that I like about ELLIS is that, oops, it's not visible yet. Okay. There seems to be just one delay between the slides. So basically, what I like about ELLIS is that it's not dependent on the funding initiatives, but it's a community of researchers that come together, and it has originally been shaped by the idea of how academics can have impact also on the future of Europe's and society, and maybe more general on the open world, right? And so far, basically our main pillars consist of research programs, PhD and postdoc program, and LSI. So there's clearly something missing about building AI, and if we want to contribute secure Europe's sovereignty as it's in the mission statement, and advancing open societies. So that's where these, okay, so there are several initiatives about open source models, foundation models, and one of the first EU initiative was ELLIS, so it basically stands for European Lighthouse of AI for Sustainability. So sustainability is something that we also as academics think is important. It has become less important in the public perception in the past. And so one question is basically, how can we use innovation that we build with AI to basically create value that goes beyond just what is directly monetizable, but also is actually creating value for the planet in a sustainable fashion. And yeah, so I try to skip this. So basically we launched the ELLIS Alliance in November last year, which brings different places together as a starting group. So you're very invited to join. It contains initiatives like the AI Launchpad that is similar to the ELLIS PhD program. It tries to basically have a one-stop shop for applying to accelerators across Europe and then having a program. There, another initiative that we do, so that is basically done by ETH Zurich. This one is something we do in Tübingen, and which is also quite related to LLM development. So basically we are trying to build a platform with an adaptive tutoring system for all the schools in Germany. And the challenges that you're facing there, basically having a personalized tutor, keeping data private, and basically acting on behalf of the student is something that is very similar to what a personal assistant is supposed to do also in this bigger scenario, right? So in some ways, I find this a more narrow niche also to tackling the bigger question, how in the future, the interaction between humans and the human society and these agents can work, because obviously the knowledge and the processes that are ramping up in the basically in the agent economy will have to be translated and brought to, it's overwhelming to be navigated by humans, and so you have to have an assistant helping you there, and basically we have to tackle the data privacy problems for that as well. So I'm close to finishing up. So basically we started in the ELLIS Alliance in February in 2024 with the workshop of open source foundation models. Oops. We are also planning another one in November 4th. So basically my hope is also from this meeting to basically find out with you together how we can get rid of these fragmented open source communities and figure out a way that basically allows us not to try with less means build several LLMs in parallel, but maybe somehow try to double down together on similar directions and strategize together what kind of developments we can push such that we can actually succeed in having impact. And so one of the things we did in Open Euro LLM is that we have set up an open strategic partnership board where we try to reach out to people who are also working on open source foundation models. We are still trying to recruit more. And these are some efforts in trying to coordinate across different communities. So let me finish here. I think oops. My general take-home message is that there's also a question about effectiveness, and basically building AI also in open source communities is a nice thing as academics, but it actually also has political dimensions. And so I phrase it as it's not coming up here. Yeah, so basically as trying to think about how we can move from open source to effective decentralization in a more societal sense, and to make it a bit more, I hope not too cheesy, but to give it some thought. Basically, I think it's not Europe, it's really the free world that needs to figure out how to maintain also the democratic freedom that we have. And I guess at some point we need something like a data for democratic AI. Thanks for your attention, and I hope I could inspire some questions. Yes.
So, in some sense, I think of proposing represented there as kind of the European approach to open source, right? I was reading a very interesting article recently on the Chinese approach to open source, and I think it's fair to say that in the eyes of many, China is effectively, is the leader within the open source AI movement, right? Producing models. The article is talking about the relative advantages of China, the ecosystem there, both in terms of kind of data advantages, as well as in, let's say, the way they've integrated the kind of the academic industry flywheel. I'm kind of wondering if you could speak to what you think are maybe some of the possible European advantages.
I mean, ideally, I would try to overcome to think about European, US. So basically, if we talk about open source, I think it should really be, or in the open world, we should try to get rid of this narrative of competition in some sense, right? So I think ultimately it is, of course, as academics, we also like competition to some extent, but I think it is very fear-driven in the end, and pushing us to do unreasonable things for humanity in the end, right? And so that's why I also felt like maybe it's not ideal to always emphasize Europe, but rather emphasizing more the open world. Basically, everyone on the globe who likes to prioritize equity of human rights above, say, wealth, right? Yes. I mean, I think we have still opportunities, and I think it's like a breeding, like Europe can still be a breeding place, can be an opportunity also to synergize like with the political ideas and the tech development. But my impression is that we also, I mean, there's very little space also for still in academics to really think these things through, right? So I feel like my thoughts are very naive still, right? So I've started thinking about these things, but it would be good to figure this out to be effective, right? So I like this term in effective altruism, the thinking like about effectiveness, and I think we need effective decentralization or effective democracies.
Looking at what Steve has done, I'm not from the field, I'm a designer, so but they seem to have gone to really quite extensive lengths, not just on the algorithm side, but also on the hardware side. And I was wondering, given that Europe has invested so much in research, and so we have so many people who actually spend their time doing research, why what's our contribution? Are we like intellectually too lazy or not all encompassing? So yes, what
there is another reason. I mean, we have EuroHPC specifically, but I think what happened on the China side, the power to make decisions actually know how to build these things. Here we have like some dinosaur institutions on the German side that not really know, some institutes having everything on the 80s that are still have very impactful political role, but have no idea how to think. They block everything. There are people in decision-making places saying, no, we should do this. I don't know how actually this one will start going, but do this. So, and this prevents a lot of progress across the existing resources, existing knowledge. So there is no laziness there. There is really a competition at political level, which has to go. Otherwise, we will.
I will add that the situation is also by design. The Chinese government has encouraged its companies to release their model for a very specific reason, to move the value behind the AI from the models to the applications that were made. So it's also the fruit of a thought, of a strategy.
But they've been doing this for a very long time with many fields, and we know this in Europe. And secondly, in the case of DeepSeek, it was not as targeted as is the common storytelling. That's not the case.
I mean,
That again is an intellectual laziness.
No, the storytelling is also a bit dangerous because you hear that, oh, it's a very small team, it's very small resources.
Other people were supposed to win. It wasn't supposed to be them. So it's, it can be
they had like 1,000 views. It's not it's a gigantic operation. It's like they sold themselves as, and it's right, like I would have done the same thing, but they sold themselves as this small niche organization that didn't have access to the same compute, but really they had 1-year-old GPU defined by no standard, and they had 50,000 of them, and behind them they had a multi-billion company. So their achievements are impressive, and I'm the first one to recognize it, but actually they're at the time when they did it, their company was the same size as OpenAI. And now, if we compare them to OpenAI, then the picture isn't that good because they're like much behind them, even coming up with a model afterwards. That's unfair, and I wouldn't compare them this way. They haven't the same focus, they haven't the same objectives. But if you want to push the comparison full, they're not a small player that came out of nowhere with nothing on their hands and that made a miracle. They are big industry leader that invested a lot.
It's still the question like
Sorry.
Europe can do the same thing.
In
The
interest.
breakout later this afternoon on compliance regulation.
No.